Today we're going to compare the Sony A7C to the A7 III. I'm not going to be talking about the specs too heavily as they are basically the same, but here is a quick overview. Both shoot full HD at 120 frames per second, 4K video at 30 frames per second, and both are full frame with 24 megapixels. Both have the proper headphone jack and audio port along with a micro HDMI. And you can also charge both of these cameras via micro USB, which is a really convenient add-on. Now the reason why I'm comparing both of these cameras today is that they are basically the same body, a little bit of different build, but the price range, they are going for basically the same price. The Sony A7 III has been on a discount for quite some time now, and it most likely will be that way. So both of these bodies come out to be around $1,700 to $800, and for a full frame body, and what you're getting with the full HD up to 120 frames per second, that's not half bad considering what you are getting. But is it worth the upgrade from the Sony A7 III if you already have that to the Sony A7C? Let's find out. Some of the differences that you should note is that the Sony A7 III has dual card slots, which is really nice because it gives you that security of being able to back up your photos and video files to both cards simultaneously. While the Sony A7C has only one SD card slot, and this is a downside, but personally, if I were using the Sony A7C as a main camera, it could be an issue. But if you are using this as a B cam, then it shouldn't be that big of a problem. Another big difference in both of these cameras are the flippy screens. For the Sony A7 III, it has a flip tilt screen, so you can't actually flip it out and vlog with it like you would with the Sony A7C, which has that proper flippy screen. And that makes it really nice to use for not only vlogging, but also getting B-roll footage, or you can use this as a main vlogging camera if you are okay with that one SD card slot. Alright, so right now I am recording on the Sony A7 III. And the biggest downside, of course, to this camera is that you don't have a flippy screen, so I can't tell if I'm in focus or what the exposure is. Luckily, this is a controlled environment, so I can always do that beforehand and know that everything is going to be set up or everything is going to be exposed correctly. Although it is kind of like a little bit nerve-wracking not knowing recording, or hopefully the audio levels are good. Speaking of audio, I am testing out this new microphone, which I will be reviewing soon, which I just recently picked up, is the Rode Video NTG. So hopefully the audio will sound better going forward. But yeah, it's like right out of frame, like right there. So hopefully it will sound good. This is what it looks like using it as a talking head type of, I guess you could buy a monitor and then hook it up to the HDMI, the micro HDMI. But even then, like that's more money that you have to put into just being able to do a talking head video like this. If you don't have the money or the extra money to spend on that, having the security of the flip out screen, especially if you are a one-person show like I am, then I would say investing in Sony A7C. Also, the button placement. The Sony A7 III has more custom buttons, but with the A7C, I didn't find the lack of custom button modes to be a problem. For example, it was still easy to change the ISO on the fly, as you can program some of the back buttons to be customizable. Well, it's easy to change the ISO if you do have the camera in front of you. While on the Sony A7 III, this is a little bit tougher if you are going to be using this as a main talking head camera or a vlogging camera. And if you are using this as a talking head camera, you will most likely have to buy a additional monitor, which will up the cost of the initial price. And now on to another big difference is the viewfinder. For example, the Sony A7C has the tiniest viewfinder I have ever used, and I don't know why they even added one onto this camera, because honestly, if you are using this for photography, you are going to use the articulating screen than the viewfinder. While on the Sony A7 III, the viewfinder is around 2 million dots, so compared to the newer cameras, you can see the difference. However, it is usable. Another big difference in these cameras are the physical body size. With the Sony A7C, I found that having the 16-35 f2.8 G Master lens on, it was relatively comfortable to hold and still lightweight, although it might be a little bit strange because the lens is so front heavy while the body is just so tiny. But it's still easy to vlog with, and the flippy screen is good enough if you're using it for vlogging and or talking heads video like this. I will note, however, that on the Sony A7C, the grip is pretty small, and it works for me as I have like really small hands and I'm like a small female. But if you are a regular sized person, and especially if you are a male, I think the grip would be pretty tiny and it might make things a little bit awkward. So just keep that in mind. And as far as I know, they currently have not released a battery grip for the Sony A7C. So my conclusion on both of these cameras is that both of these cameras are great, but it depends on what your needs are. For example, photography and video needs are different with both cameras. If you're looking for an entry-level full-frame camera with an articulating screen and that has full HD up to 120 frames per second with autofocus, honestly, the Sony A7C is pretty darn good considering the price. And if you compare this to the EOS R when it came out, it only had 120 frames per second in 720p, which honestly was a pretty big disappointment. So if you are looking to get your entry-level first full-frame camera, then the Sony A7C is probably a good bet, because you aren't only getting the function of the body, the Sony A7C body, but you're also getting the quality of the lens selection for full-frame E-mount lenses. Although being in 2021, it is a potential that you might want to hold off on buying any of these cameras and possibly wait for the Sony A7 IV to come out, which is the successor to the A7 III, and see if that has the best of both. Other than that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and yeah, let me know which camera would you be considering buying in 2021, or are you going to hold off and potentially buy or upgrade to a Sony camera down the line? Let me know, and of course, stay awesome, and I will see you guys in the next video.